Flag. I pledge allegiance to the Christian flag and to the Savior for whose kingdom it stands. One Savior, crucified, buried, risen, and coming again, with life and liberty for all who believe. And the Bible. I pledge allegiance to the Bible, God's holy word. I will make it a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path, and I will hide its words in my heart, that I might not sin against God. Lord, I thank you today for the beautiful day that you've given us, and the rain and the clouds are exactly what we need today, and we know it's a day that you've made. We'll rejoice and be glad in it. And I just thank you for the excitement of this day as we start a new Sunday school class for the younger adults, and I just pray that you'd give them good fruit today for their labors, and that they would be able to begin to establish a new bond as a class. And I just pray that you would bless our whole church today, and especially during the Sunday school hour. There are teachers who have prepared lessons, and there are students who are hungry to learn. And I just pray that you'll be honored and pleased this morning, and that we would hear from you. We'd like to sit at your feet and know more about you, be able to live a life that's more pleasing to you because of what we know that we can obey. And I just pray that you would meet our needs today. And we do have a need to love you more. We need you more in our lives. And I just pray that as we yield to you and learn of you and from you today, that you'll be delighted in this place. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, be seated if you would. And let me go ahead and see what I've got for some announcements. I did mention that we started a new Sunday school class today. So in here, I've never done it like this before, and if it works, I'll keep doing it. But they had asked if instead of being in the opening assembly, if the new class that is basically between, if you're too old to be in the teen class, or if you are in the younger range, not really a hard cutoff on it, but I'll have more of the senior end of the adults, people my age and older maybe, that's getting pretty old by then. And but it isn't so much like a college and career class like we've had in the past. This is going to go a little bit beyond that. But Brother Ryan Cruz and his family are the ones who are doing it. And so a couple of reasons I'm mentioning it, I just want you to pray about it. It's just anytime you do something new and different, there's always opportunities. You know what movement does? If you're not sure, take your hands like this and press them together and move them back and forth like that a little bit. That's what happens when things move sometimes. And sometimes the devil uses that to his advantage, and so we need to pray against that. But it's also, if there's no movement, then you sit still and you get stagnant and you start to rot. So we just have it bathed in prayer, and just be faithful in your place. Another thing that it might affect some of you, if you're not here hearing this, but those who are in that class that have children, they're not starting out with the children. Their children will be in the opening assembly. So that's going to require the children either to be with a delegated adult, or if their teachers are able to handle it, they can sit by them. And we think we've thought through most of those details, but if there's something that somebody says, oh, Pastor did this, didn't even, just be nice about it and be part of the solution, and that would be appreciated, right? Anybody can flap their gums, but it doesn't solve anything, so it's better just to not be that way if you were tempted to be one of those, all right? A couple things then. In Sunday school, we were going to dismiss on time, or maybe a couple of minutes early, because the choir is singing this morning, and we are planning to have the practice in the choir ready room between Sunday school and church. And I say this every time just because I know when people come in that weren't here for Sunday school, they come in for church, and you've got a dozen or more people that are not in here because they're practicing. They walk in like there's hardly anybody here, and the people who are here might not be among the ones who normally think to go up and greet people as they come in. So if you're not in the choir, don't just sit there like this. When people come in, you're designated now. I'm delegating to you to be our welcoming committee while the choir's not in the room, all right? And I would just, when I've gone a couple times into a place and the air was just dead, there was no music playing, and people they either wouldn't look at you at all, or they'd give you one of these little looks. You know, you remember that, and I never want anybody to say I went to Emmanuel and that happened, and I would think that couldn't have happened. But anyway, just thought I'd mention that again. And then choir practice tonight, and then if you are going to be involved as a worker in the Vacation Bible School, that's something else that's coming up sooner than we think. And I think we probably have talked to most people who are doing the different aspects of it. We have people who teach, do crafts, do games, the food, and other things like that. But after church tonight, if we could just kind of, I don't expect it to be long, but at least if once we could get everybody in the same place, people doing a registration table and just different things like that, just to kind of begin making sure that we got some of these things covered and that you have everything you need as you prepare for that. All right, so that would be appreciated. That's going to be just next month, the end of June, is Vacation Bible School. All right, our worker of the week is Roger Brown. I almost put Roger and Kathy. Kathy does a few things that she kind of does anonymously, and so I didn't. I decided just to put Roger on there. Roger plays his. I call it a kazoo. I don't know exactly what it's called. It's some kind of a horn. But what's it called? It is an oboe? Okay. All right. And then, so anyway, but they're another one of the families that really relatively recently has come into our church. And so we appreciate the Browns. All right. And of course, she has a lot of health issues. And, you know, they have a couple other things that they're dealing with. So, but we appreciate them. All right. Then let's see what I've got in the back. Tomorrow is Brother David Howe's birthday, and he wanted it to be something humble, you know. But he had talked to me about this, and he said, when you talk about my birthday, it's his 80th birthday tomorrow. It's not a world's record, but it's above average, right? And so he just wanted to make sure that nothing needs to be about him being special, although we think he is, but he just wanted to be grateful to God and let us know that God has given him 80 years of life and a good home and a good walk with the Lord all these years, and we appreciate him and Darlene being in the church too. All right. And then Walter Graham's birthday is Friday. I talked to him yesterday, and he's still constantly dealing with issues with hydration, and that affects, you know, his ability to get nutrition in his body, and he's still losing weight, I think. He told me he was 97 pounds. And I remember that's what we used to say, don't go to the beach if you're a 97-pound weakling, because that's when the bullies will kick sand in your face, right? I told him that you can't go to the beach until you gain some weight, or you're going to be I don't know if I said it quite that mean, but anyway, his birthday is Friday, and so keep praying for them. Missionaries of the Week, we have the O'Briens and the Paulies. Actually these are some that they've been on the field for a long, long time, and I don't always get regularly updates from them, but I do have new reports, prayer letters for each of those, so I'm looking forward to sharing with you about that a little bit later. All right, that's it for the announcements. Let's go ahead and see if we can get the ushers to come in here. We'll get our offering received. Everybody happy? Yes, sir. I forget to look up and check every once in a while. All right. Do we have anybody here for the first time today? I know Lily had a little friend, Stephanie's cousin's daughter or something like that. All right, so, and that's your first time here, right? Okay, good. So we appreciate you being with us today, right? All right, yes, ma'am. And you're here for the first time, too. Okay, well, I recognize everybody else in there, so I'm glad that you came, too. We'll make sure that we get you a visitor's bag before church starts, all right? Before the next service starts. All right, well, now, this doesn't happen very often. I've got two ushers who both pray. So I'm going to go eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Brother Phil, if you want to ask the Lord to bless you.
Heavenly Father, Lord Jesus, we just want to thank you for another day that you've given to us, Lord, another opportunity that we have to gather our hearts together as a church family. Lord, we're just asking and pray for your blessings on our services this day, Lord God, that you just speak to our hearts in a special way. Lord God, that we would just be drawn closer to you. Lord, that we would just be used for your honor and for your glory. In Jesus' precious name, amen.
Amen. Right, we'll have these guys come by and get the offering. Good-looking Sunday school crowd this morning, especially without, do you know how many they had over there? They had plenty. They have, I'm not going to even tell you that they have fresh cinnamon rolls and things like that. She baked them in the oven this morning after she got here. But real Christians don't need stuff like that. Especially if you're diabetic. All right, let's go ahead and get the kids up here. And we'll get them all in one place. And good morning. All right, a good-looking bunch this morning. All right, now we'll get my beautiful bride to come on up here. How many of you knew that Miss Jody and I are married? Did you know that? All right. Some of us are even just waking up. Okay. Good morning. All right, so I know some people told me they already know this song. The sermon this morning is going to be called Obedience is the Very Best Way. So, there is a song that we occasionally sing that says pretty much that. All right, so it goes, obedience is the very best way to show that you believe, doing exactly as the Lord's command, doing it happily. Action is the key, do it, and joy you will receive. Obedience is the very best way to show that you believe. All right, think we can do it? And there's no dance that goes with this one, or motions. Yeah, you could do that. Oh, what was the one? Miss Sharon, do you want to teach us your sign language that you learned this morning? That she taught me some sign language this morning. This isn't part of the lesson. Yeah, we'll do that later. If you I embarrassed her. Did you tell Brother Heck? Yeah, and it would be perfectly directed to him, too, when you teach it to him. Yes? Okay, well, you can do it then. Yeah, do the whole song. All right, here we go. We got to get all right, ready? Obedience is the very best way to show that you believe. Doing exactly as the Lord commands, doing it happily. Action is the key, do it immediately, and joy you will receive. Obedience is the very best way to show that you believe. Let's spell it O-B-E-D-Y-E-N-C-E. Obedience is the very best way to show that you believe. I don't have any idea what I just spelled. But every once in a while, you'll see like a news conference, and they'll have a silent, and you know that they don't know what they're doing. They're just up there doing this gibberish. I want a gig like that. All right, that's everybody. Are you happy still? If you are in Miss Jody's nursery class, all right, Miss Elizabeth brought a bunch of them in already. Good morning, girls. We're just now dismissing, so you guys are good. And then we've got Miss Sherry, her class. All right, you got your age group. All right. And then Miss Sharon. All right, good. You guys got good classes today. And then who's next? Miss Shauna and Miss Doreen. And then we got the teenagers. And now we have the oldest of the old, which is a compliment. I don't feel old. Age is just a number. All right, we are going to be, this doesn't look too much different than usual. I was afraid I was going to have crickets in here. I was going to tell everybody, come sit up in the front. When I was in South Carolina, I probably had 8 to 10 adults in the auditorium class, and so I would put the podium like in front of one of the side sections. Every once in a while, somebody would come in and they'd want to sit over there, and I wouldn't say anything about it. I would just stand here the whole time and talk to them. Next time they come, they would sit with everybody else. So never even had to say anything. But this is a pretty good spread. I'm pretty happy about this. All right, let's see if I can find Matthew, and Matthew chapter 8. And last week we went through the story about the centurion. And if you remember the word centurion, it kind of sounds like century, meaning 100. So instead of 100 years, the centurion was a Roman authority who had charge of 100 troops, 100 men under him. And so that's what the centurion was. And in Matthew's gospel, in chapter 8, it says in verse 5 that Jesus was entered into Capernaum. There came unto him a centurion, beseeching him, saying, Lord, my servant lieth at home, sick of the palsy, grievously tormented. And Jesus said unto him, I will come and heal him. The centurion answered and said, Lord, I am not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. For I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to this man, go, and he goeth, and to another, come, and he cometh, and to my servant, do this, and he doeth it. When Jesus heard it, in verse 10, he marveled and said unto them that followed, Verily I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. And I say unto you that many shall come from the east and west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And Jesus said unto the centurion, Go thy way, and as thou hast believed, so be it done unto thee. And his servant was healed in the selfsame hour. So, we spent 40 minutes last week kind of talking about what we just read there. A couple of key things that this man was not a Jew. He would have been a Gentile and a centurion. And he was somebody who was, you could say he was kind of a big deal. And he was used to being the one who was in command. And he came to Jesus and said, this isn't anything for me. I've got one of my servants who is really sick, and I can't do anything for him. Most of my life, I've been able to order somebody to do it or pay to have somebody do it. But this is something that I'm helpless with, and the only thing that I can do, the only thing I've got left, is if Jesus can do it. And that is the kind of faith that we need to have. You find that when the group came down from the college in Haines City, from Landmark, a few weeks ago, we sent them in the McGregor Millionaire District, and then we sent them down in in some of the projects and some of the lower income areas. And they said, this was really a different year for us because some of the places were really, really hard. Some of them were hard because they might be a community that spoke different languages and they couldn't communicate with them. Some of them were hard because the people were so wealthy they couldn't get in because you had to use a hand scan on a pad to let the gate open, and then the chauffeur would take them up to the front door, and they had a hard time getting in some of those. And the ones that they did get into, those people, they're multimillionaires, many of them, and they're not going to say, hey, if we give you a piece of bubble gum, would you ride our bus and come to Sunday school? Because everything they need, they buy themselves, or they can work for it. And a lot of the reason they may be that way, they're successful people because they have good work ethics. They're not just sitting there waiting for everything to be given to them. They're people who say, no, I'm going to make this happen. And it's hard for somebody. Jesus said that it's hard for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. And I think the reason for that is they're not used to humbling themselves and saying, I can't help myself. I'm a sinner, and my sin condemns me, and I can't be in God's presence. I know what I can do. If somebody tells them the Bible plan of salvation, they go to Jesus and they say, I am used to calling all the shots in my life. I am used to either paying for or working for everything I've ever needed. but this is something I can't do for myself. And so I want to come to Jesus, and I want to say, if you will, I know you can do this. And so you think about it, this was not a Jew who had been trained in the scriptures. This was just somebody who said, there's something that's out of my control. One of my servants, of all people, he didn't have to care about his servants, but it just kind of showed what kind of a guy he was. I'm just really concerned. This servant of mine is sick, and there's nothing I can do about him. And so Jesus said, okay, well, I'll go to your house, and I'll heal him. And he said, no, I'm not worthy that you should come into my house. All you have to do is speak the word, and he'll be healed. And Jesus said, wow. He marveled. Why? Because, and that's why he said that in verse number 10. He marveled and said, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. The people who should know better, the people who had all the prophecies of Jesus, who were mostly rejecting him because he wasn't delivering them from Rome. They wanted the Messiah to come and be a king. They didn't want him to come and be a servant, right? And so, of course, Matthew portrays Jesus as a king. But he had to show here, Jesus said, I am coming to be a servant. And so Jesus wanted to go to this guy's house, and the guy said, no, that's not necessary. And so all you have to do is say the word, and he'll be healed. And so now then, but here's what he said. I haven't found this kind of faith in Israel. The people who have been in church all their lives, they're not as excited about God as somebody who just came to Jesus. And I don't fuss a lot about that because I'm probably guilty of that myself. The longer we're saved, the easier it is for us just to kind of get routine and habit and humdrum in our Christianity, and we're not as enthusiastic or it's not as fresh. But it can be. If you really are doing it right, you'd be paying attention, right? When somebody is talking about, hey, God doesn't want you to just be marginal as a Christian. He wants you to like lean forward and say, wow, this is something that maybe this might be something for me. Jesus was scolding Israel because he hadn't found the kind of faith in Israel that he was finding in this Roman centurion. And then you're like, well, I'm not sure that's really what he meant. So the next verse he says, many shall come from the east and the west and shall sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. Well, you know where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are right now? They're what we would consider as being in heaven. And so there are people who are not, they might not be Jews, people who might not even be Baptists, people who might not be independent fundamental Baptists like we are. And here's the scary thing, and I think this is what Jesus was getting at. There are people who dot all their I's and cross all their T's just perfectly, but they never got it in their hearts. And if they are saved, they're not living a life of faith. They don't go to Jesus and say, Jesus, there's something that I can't do for myself. I really need to plead with you to help me with this. They're like, no, I'm saved. I'm good. I can handle everything else. And Jesus is not pleased with that. God is not happy with Christians who say, why do I need faith? I'm already going to heaven. Or people who say, well, you know what? I'm doing all these things. I think I'm okay. You might not even be saved. If you don't have the kind of faith that you live, and again, God's the judge of this. I don't want to be. I don't want to pretend to be. But Jesus said there are people who are children of the kingdom. He was talking in the context of Israel. There are people who they have every advantage to be God's people. The only thing they haven't done is they haven't put their faith in practice. And they have not believed to the point where it motivated them to some action. And in that extreme, it could even be that they know the truth, but the truth is not in them. They've got it right here, but they don't have it right here. And so, he said there are people from the east and the west who are going to sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the father of the Jewish nation. They're going to sit down with them, and they're not even one of his descendants. and they're going to be sitting with these guys in the kingdom of heaven. But the children of the kingdom, what's going to happen to some of them? They'll be cast into outer darkness with weeping and gnashing of teeth. Does that sound familiar when the Bible talks about a place where there's weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth? That doesn't sound like the lower tier of what heaven is. That sounds like people who should have been the ones. And again, I'm moving on to the next telling of this. It's just a little bit of a recap from last week, but I'm still a little bit concerned in my own life that God wouldn't look at somebody who just got saved. I'll never forget my first church. A guy got saved, and he used to always tell people that he grew ginseng in his backyard. He, lived way out in a rural area. And he wasn't growing. He might have had a little bit of ginseng, but he was growing weed back there. And everybody in the neighborhood knew this guy is just he was just known in the community as the guy that was just always up to something. Well, the guy got saved. And he started coming to church, and some of my old pious Pharisees who thought that they were the cat's meow spiritually, they came to me one day. Because what happened was I was preaching. The first time I said something I said, man, I'm just really excited about God, something like that. And he said, amen. And you know what my sourpuss, deacon material, people did? Turn around and look at him like, who's this guy? He was wearing a T-shirt, and he had a pack of cigarettes rolled up in his T-shirt sitting in the back pew there at church. And then during the preaching later, I was kind of getting excited and getting with it, and the guy said a cuss word, but he said, blank, that's good. It was his first time in church after he had gotten saved. And afterwards, people come up to me, what are you going to do about that? And I said, well, I'm going to pray that you'll get as excited about God as he is. That's the first thing I'm going to do. God will take care of his rough edges. I'm more concerned about the children of the kingdom who might get cast into outer darkness because they're all whited sepulchres on the outside, and I don't know what's on the inside, but God does. And it's if you can't tell by looking on the outside, and I told some of those people, this was been, 30 years ago. It was in 97, so almost 30 years ago. And I told some of those people, and I really did. I said, what are you going to do about these guys? And I said, well, I'm going to pray that more of you, get that excited about God. And just, they just like, Pastor, we don't know what we're going to do with you. Well, I started the church. I hadn't taught them how to vote me out yet. As far as they knew, that was the way we did things. And I was serious about it. I said, you don't need to get out-Christianed by somebody who's only been a Christian for a couple of weeks. You need to be the one to show him how to do it right. You need to be the one to stay excited about the things of God. Yeah. You need to be the one who's the example. You need to be the one when somebody comes in, they're like, I don't know what to do. They're like, hey, man, come here and sit by me, by my family. I've been in this church for 20 years, and man, this is just the greatest thing. I'm so excited about what God's doing here. That's going to make a lot more of an impact on them than, And so, anyway, that just, I read through that again, and I don't have a lot of time. I shouldn't have spent that much time on it. But that's the story. And the servant was healed in the selfsame hour. So now let's go to Luke chapter 7. It's the same story, but there's a little bit of a different angle on it. And so let's look at this. Luke chapter 7. And let's look at the first verse. When he had ended his sayings, just kind of finished up the Sermon on the Mount. And so I'm in Luke chapter 7 now. When he had ended all his sayings in the audience of the people, he entered into Capernaum. Right? So there the story and the setting is exactly the same. Verse 2 said, a certain centurion's servant who was dear unto him was sick and ready to die. And when he heard of Jesus, he sent unto him the elders of the Jews, beseeching him that he would come and heal his servant. Now, in Matthew, it just said that the centurion came to Jesus. And what we see in Luke was Jesus was in Capernaum, and the centurion who was there was sick and was at the point of death. When he heard of Jesus, he called some of the Jewish elders and said, hey, would you guys have a connection with this Jesus guy? I'd really like to get to him. And so beseeching him that he would come and heal his servant. And when they, verse 4, when they came to Jesus, they besought him instantly, saying that he was worthy for whom he should do this. Right? Now, so it's not contradictory, but this is part of what happened. What we saw in Matthew was the part where this centurion came to Jesus and said, my servant is sick. If you, I know you can heal him. Jesus said, let's go. And he said, no, just say the word. You're not worthy to come into my house. But what's happened here is the centurion realizes his servant is about to die, and he hears that Jesus has come into Capernaum. And so he's like, okay, I am this man under authority, but I'm talking about Jesus now. And so he had some of the Jewish leaders go to Jesus, and when they went, I don't think this man, because he seemed humble, but listen to what's happening here. The centurion tells these Jewish guys, go find Jesus. And so Jesus is like, well, this important guy wants us to go talk to Jesus. So, you know, if Jesus knows that we know this important guy, he may, you know, it may bring us something. You know what it reminds me of? When Bartimaeus, the blind man, was sitting by the highway side begging, and he heard that Jesus was there, and so he started calling out, Jesus, Jesus. And the people who were around Jesus went to him and said, shh, be quiet. Don't make so much noise. Jesus is coming through here. He doesn't have time to bother with you. Don't bother Jesus. But he cried out the more, and Jesus heard him. And Jesus says, guys, bring them to me. And now they're like, oh, okay. The same people who were discouraging him from trying to get Jesus' attendance, now they're like, well, if I get to be in this photo shot when they see I'm the one bringing this guy to Jesus. You know, it shows the motives of people sometimes, you know. Yep, I'm the guy who brought him to Jesus. Yeah, but a minute ago you were telling him to be quiet, you know. And so these Jews here who were not real crazy about Jesus, most likely, if they were like most of them, they go to Jesus in verse 4, and so they say, hey, this guy is worthy for whom he should do this. So the Jews go to Jesus on behalf of the centurion and say, this centurion is really a big shot. It would really be in your best interest to try to go and help this guy. You know? And so Jesus already had that. And verse 5, for he loveth our nation, and he hath built us a synagogue. See, we didn't know that from Matthew. But Jesus, in Luke, is portrayed as a man. Right? Remember Luke the physician talked about the humanity. And he's thinking, you know what, this guy did some stuff for us. This guy's a worthy person. He's given us a lot of money. He's built us these buildings and things like that. So, you know, come and see if you could schmooze with this guy a little bit, do him a favor. It would probably come back to you someday. And he's worthy for whom should do this. He loveth our nation and buildeth a synagogue. Now, verse 6, Jesus, look at this. We didn't see this in Matthew. And again, I don't see any contradiction here. This is just a different angle. We're looking at a different camera of the same event now. So, verse 6, then Jesus went with them, and when he was now not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to him, saying, Lord, trouble not thyself, for I am not worthy that thou shouldest enter under my roof. So again, he sent the Jews to go tell Jesus if he'd come heal him. The Jews go up and say, hey, this guy's this guy's a big donor, you know, let's come and make sure we give him attention. And Jesus actually was on his way to the house, and the guy realizes, what? Oh, Jesus is coming here. I'm not worthy that he should come here. The Jews just told Jesus, this guy is really a worthy guy. He's given us some stuff. We think we're worthy because of what we give. If you're worthy of anything, it's because of what God has done for you, not what you've done for yourself. You'll know your worth the more closely you look in the mirror of his word and compare it to his holiness. But so here's what he says. So now he sends some friends and says, Lord, don't go through this trouble for yourself. I'm not worthy that thou shouldest enter my roof, whether neither thought I myself worthy to come unto thee. But he did come to him, but there were some other things that happened before he did. He didn't just walk around and say, hey, Jesus, I want you to do it. And to me, it deepens the meaning of what has happened a little bit more when I realize that before Jesus had this conversation with him, the guy had said, I'm not worthy to even be in his presence. I'm going to send some Jews. Because as far as I understand, he's this religious figure. He's a teacher that they kind of respect. Maybe they can get him just to pray for and to heal my servant. And of course, they were like, no, we want to, let's make a big parade out of it. And so they started going back to where the centurion lived, and he sees him and sends some of his friends and says, tell Jesus there's a reason I didn't want to go to him. It's because I'm not worthy. And I'm not worthy that you should come all the way to my house, but if you speak the word, look at verse number 7. So he had just said in verse 6, I'm not worthy that thou should enter under my roof. Wherefore, neither thought I myself worthy to come unto thee, but say in a word, and my servant shall be healed. And then verse 8, the same thing you saw in Matthew, I also am a man set under authority. Having under me soldiers, I say unto one, go, and he goeth, to another, come, and he cometh, and to my servant, do this, and he doeth it. And when Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him, and turned him about, and said unto the people that followed him, I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. And they that were sent, returning to the house, found the servant whole that had been sick. So a lot of the same truths that you gain from it, but just a little bit more information. To me, it actually makes this centurion even more humble than I thought he was in Matthew. And Jesus marveled at it. This guy didn't think that, the reason he didn't want to come to me was because he didn't think he was worthy to be in my presence. And now, when he finds me going to his house, because these other guys told me that he was worthy, and he says, no, I'm not worthy that you come to my house. That's when Jesus spun around and he said, wow, I marvel at this. I haven't found this kind of faith in Israel. Now here, it did not mention the part where after he marveled, he said people are going to come from the east and the west and sit with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom. It just that detail didn't need to be in here, so it wasn't mentioned. And he didn't say that there are going to be people of the children of the kingdom who are going to be cast into outer darkness. So when you read the Gospels in particular, you will see things that are repeated, and it's a good thing, and that's what this study has been for a long time. I don't know how long I've been doing this, probably a year, and it's just part. If you learn to do that in the Gospels, because it's not very hard. Most of your Bibles, your reference Bibles, or you can look up online and find out where some of these stories are repeated. Doesn't take a lot of scholarship to do that. Most of the time, if you have a Bible that has footnotes in it, it'll say, look at Luke chapter 7, and it'll tell the same story. And you could just do that on your own when you read the Bible. But if you learn how to do that, you can expand that learning method or that study method or even that teaching method. You can learn that with the entire Bible. And this morning, we had a little conversation about some things in the Bible, and we were talking about something that was in Ecclesiastes, and I said, there's a verse in Jude, there's a verse in 2 Corinthians, and it connects these things, and the biggest favor you can do for yourself. Well, we were talking about the Sunday school class with the cruises yesterday, and because I mostly have taught auditorium classes, we don't sit around tables and drink coffee and eat donuts and say, what do you think about this? What does this verse say to you? And does anybody have any thoughts or ideas? You just can't do that. This is more of a lecture style class. But what Brother Ryan is hoping to be able to do, have a group of people who are at maybe even a stage of life where they can not just be fed, but while they're being fed, they can learn how to feed themselves. Spiritually, I'm talking about. And so, you know, even in this class and in the other, most of the other Sunday school classes, they're smaller groups and they're sitting around tables. We don't have color sheets. I was coloring with your little girl the other day. You know, I had fun doing that. They came in and they were dealing with something, and the little girl was kind of getting bored, and I said, well, let's print up a couple of color sheets, and I'll go steal some crayons out of a Sunday school room. And we were just laying on the floor, and we were coloring pictures. You know, I'm probably not going to have time to do that in this class. But I would do you a favor every once in a while, and I had this extra minute. I've got another subject that I'll just start next week, but so we can dismiss in plenty of good time. But just because this was a pretty simple lesson, only mentioned in 2 of the Gospels, and you know, pretty much had covered the meat of it last week and just kind of frosted it over a little bit today. I guess that's not a good illustration, is it? You don't put frosting on meat, do you? Last week I baked the cake. Today I put the frosting on it. Is that better? Anybody even care? But the point is, I had the extra minute, and I thought, you know, I think that it's good for people just to say, oh, that is interesting. Maybe some of the things that were said, that were applications that came out of the story. I'm more interested in the Bible being something that I can live than just something I can fill my head up with things. So I can say, I know something that you don't know. You know, I know I've memorized the book of Malachi or something like that. Okay, good for you, but if you don't obey it, you know. All right, I think I'm to the point where I ought to just pray and dismiss this right now. How many of you are awake? All right, about 6 people. That's about right. All right, let me pray, and then it's just now perfect time to dismiss and get ready for choir. All right? Lord, we do thank you for the morning. We just thank you for teaching us this morning and just looking at Bible stories and just kind of talking through them and trying to live them out in our minds, and then asking you what we can know, what we can change, what we can benefit from, how we can be more like you and serve you better. Purge us of things in our lives that don't belong, and just keep our love for you fresh and exciting and new. Let us be good examples to these who you've given us the ability to reach with the gospel. And I just pray that as we grow together, that we'll be pleasing to you in everything we say and do, our motive, thoughts, and heart, our intent. I just pray again that you would be pleased this morning.